What are the dumbest things entrepreneurs do that decreases the value whenever they want to exit a company?
Yeah, I mean, there's a million, but some of the really, really dumb mistakes come down to they say too much, they share too much, they give way too much away. They don't really know what they stand for and what they have to have be true in a transaction, so they're indiscriminate with their negotiating strategy. They don't use outside advisors. That's a massive one. I think a lot of times entrepreneurs feel really confident in their ability to run companies. So if I know how to run it, I certainly know how to sell it to somebody else. There's a reason lawyers don't represent themselves in court. There's a reason doctors don't do surgery on themselves. There's a reason entrepreneurs should never, ever try and sell their company by themselves. They pick bad advisors. They use their family attorney that did their will and estate stuff, and all of a sudden now they think they're a deal attorney. They'll use even their business attorney that doesn't do transactions. It is not time to be screwing around when you're going through an exit process. You need to be your most professional, your most driven. You need to put the best people around you that you can. And you want to make sure that you've got every I dotted and T crossed. And listen, entrepreneurs, most of us are a bit of a mess, right? We shoot from the hip and we run the business the way we think we're supposed to. We don't like to follow rules very much, but we're selling to sophisticated buyers that understand how to follow rules, and they understand how to spot entrepreneurs that are a little bit sort of renegade or on the edge, and they know how to exploit those things incredibly well. And it's super important that you know the rules of the game. There's a playbook. In selling a company, there is an absolute playbook. And if you don't know that playbook, you are in serious, serious trouble. The analogy we give is, imagine it's like playing golf. And you have a set of golf clubs up in your attic that belong to your grandfather, and you've never played golf before. You've watched it on TV, and you think you know the game, but you've never actually stood on a tee and hit a golf ball. And you show up at the local country club with your grandfather's golf clubs, and yeah, I've watched it on TV. I know how this game works. And there on the first tee is Rory McIlroy or Tiger Woods, or pick your poison. Who's going to win that golf match? If you're going to go through a process to exit, you need to know everything there is to know about the process, because I promise the buyer is a really, really good buyer in almost every case, and you're totally outmatched. And if you don't take the time and bring the people in and do the work to get ready to go to market and exit properly, it's like you're totally, totally in trouble.
What are some more dumb mistakes?
So a lot of times entrepreneurs will get so distracted by the process that all of a sudden the business is in decline, and they're having emergency meetings like turnover's up or revenue's down, or God forbid profitability's fallen off, or your margins are eroded, or you just start like getting distracted by the process, and all of a sudden you're at a huge disadvantage, and now you never want to have a conversation with a buyer about why things aren't going well. Another huge one is you don't want the buyer to find a skeleton in your closet that you didn't know was there. So we believe really strongly you should be the buyer of your business first. You should go in tomorrow and look at your company not as the owner, but as a prospective buyer. And you walk in tomorrow as a prospective buyer and you look and, well, that's kind of out of place, and what's going on over here, and why are you doing this? And so if you could run a reverse due diligence process on yourself, you want to discover the skeletons in your closet, the things that aren't quite right, the missing documents, the contracts that aren't there, all the things. You want to find those. You never want a buyer to find something that you didn't know about. And I've had it happen. We were 2 weeks from a transaction, and the CFO and the COO were doing some funny things they weren't stealing money from the company. They were doing some accounting things to actually lower their tax burden, their IRS tax burden. And the entrepreneur kind of knew about it, but sort of didn't want to know and didn't pay attention. And we go in, the first thing we say is, listen, There is no topic off limits. We're not going to judge. If there's something going on that is questionable, we need to know about it or we can't help you. And we said that to them. They didn't share. And finally, we're about 2 weeks. This was a $45 million transaction. We're 2 weeks from close, and almost by accident, in due diligence, there was one thing that popped up which caused the buyer to ask one question, which unraveled like the entire transaction. And what the buyer said was, listen, these guys are going to have to run the company after the sale. And if their integrity is at a level that they're willing to basically commit tax fraud, and it was a $45 million transaction, these two collectively, maybe over the last 5 years, had saved $100,000 in taxes. So $100,000 for the COO and the CFO cost the entrepreneur a $45 million transaction. That was about 8 years ago. That company still hasn't transacted. We were 2 weeks away from getting it done. So if there's a skeleton in the closet, you find it first. Never, ever let the buyer tell you that there's something broken in your business.
What else? More dumb mistakes entrepreneurs make whenever they want to exit a company. Small things, big things, could be anything.
Yeah.
Even
So
like an email example, like.
yeah. So I think a lot. I mean, there's so many things. Like selling a company, most entrepreneurs are going to do it once or twice in their lifetime, and they think it's just like the next step in the process, and they don't take the time to get educated. They don't take the time to learn what it's all about. They don't do proper tax planning. And like, I could show you $300 million transactions where one entrepreneur walks away with 25 million, one entrepreneur walks away with 50, and one walks away with 80. The buyer paid 100 in all three, but because of improper planning ahead of time, the structure of the deal, not understanding how things work, what you end up with at the end of the day has a lot more to do than the check that's delivered at close. So understanding how to do planning properly. And again, you're so distracted by the transaction, you're distracted trying to run your business. Now you've got to bring in attorneys and estate people and trusts and all the other stuff. That often gets abdicated and set to the side. And you end up potentially leaving millions of dollars on the table, not because the buyer didn't pay the right number, but because you didn't do the proper planning. Another big mistake entrepreneurs make, like fundamentally critical, they imagine the transaction's done in their mind long before it's ever done. Never count the money. So we always say, be ready to walk away from the transaction right up until the ink dries and the wire hits the bank. You need to be, even if there's only one buyer of your business, you need to be the other buyer. You're the other party negotiating against the buyer, because at the end of the day, you can pull the deal at the 11th hour and the 59th minute only if you're willing to do that. So you always want to run the business like you're never going to sell it right up until you do, and you need to be willing to walk at any moment for whatever reason is meaningful to you. As soon as the buyer knows you're not willing to walk, you've given up all your leverage, they have all the negotiating power, and you've totally disadvantaged yourself. So selling a company is 80% mindset, 20% tactics. And you have to go into it. That's the number one thing entrepreneurs really, really screw up. They don't have the right mindset in selling companies. They don't go into it like ready, psychologically ready for the process. And the buyer makes them think they're their friend, and all of a sudden they're right at the end, and oh, we're gonna pull this away, we're gonna pull this away, and you basically, like, you're exhausted at that point, and you're like, fine, just take it. And you, again, millions of dollars left on the table.